Hi, it's Michael and Anthony here presenting Small Business Banter. A healthy micro and small business sector means a successful economy and a more vibrant society. Small Business Banter is about helping regional business owners better prepare for the current challenges, but also for the next stage of business success. I'm Michael Kerr, founder of Kerr Capital, advisors to business owners. Each week, with Anthony Turner from the Small Business Mentoring Service, we'll interview a different small business expert or a fellow business owner and get them to share their best tips and insights for you, the listeners. Small Business Banter is brought to you from the studios of 104.7 Gippsland FM and is heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. Thanks also to our supporters, Kerr Capital and the Small Business Mentoring Service. Okay, welcome to another edition of Small Business Banter Radio. With me and Anthony today is Ashley Darwen, who is the founder of, I think it's pronounced ADITS, run out of Bowen in Queensland. It's an IT servicing company. Ashley's going to talk a little bit more about what he does at ADITS. So welcome in, Ashley, firstly.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And welcome in co-host Anthony Turner from the Small Business Mentoring Service.
Thanks, Michael, and nice to be back again.
So let's start with Ashley. You started this business yourself as a 20-year-old. You're now 36 employees. It's a hell of a story. Do you want to just give us a couple of minute background on yourself, and then we'll start talking about your business and the journey that you've been on to grow it to 36 employees?
Yes, thank you. So basically, I was born and bred in Bowen and went to school there. I suppose when my working career started, when I was in year 11 and 12, and I think one of the teachers there thought I could be putting my efforts to something productive because obviously schoolwork wasn't going 100% well. So she offered me a school-based traineeship at the high school where I was at. So she said, "Oh, I think this will be for you, and did you want to do it?" So I said, "Yeah, no, that sounds good." So I started at the local high school 1 day a week, which then turned into 2 days a week and 3 days school, then 4, and then 1 day of school. So over sort of my year 11 and 12 school year, lots of that was working as a school-based IT trainee. And then after I graduated in year 12, they said, "Look, we think you've done a good job. Did you want to stay on full time?" So that's basically how I started. I did that for a few years working for the school. And then after that, probably, you work and you get things how you want them and you get a bit bored. So after that, at 20, I thought that starting my own business would be a good idea. And when you're 20, you're pretty young and naive. So I went home to my parents and said, "Yeah, this is what I want to do." And yeah, if my child come home and said that, I'd be a bit hesitant about it, but they were supportive and said, "Yeah, no, have you thought this through?" Yep. So
well, it sounds like you also had a supportive teacher that identified you had an aptitude for IT.
Yeah,
which is
probably
wonderful.
more than I did. So that's good that she did that. and thankful to her for that. So
yeah.
But yeah, so no, that's how I started, and then started the business at 20, and and went from there.
Yeah, well, when we roll forward, you look like you're a young fella. So let's say,
that's what I tell people. Yeah,
15 years. So what does the business look like today, and what does it do?
Yeah, so I know you asked how it was pronounced. ADITS is normally how it's pronounced, but there's been a few reiterations that happen from time to time. But basically, we're what we call a managed service provider. So we provide support, IT support for businesses right through from like a startup or 1 or 2 employees right through to a large school or enterprise with 500. So we have a big demographic of businesses that we look after, and we provide support right through from when their internet comes into their end user support, because, we sort of sit as the conduit between, the 300 vendors, IT providers out there, and the business, and is the conduit between. So that's where we sit.
Yeah, it's pretty confusing if you're not dealing in IT day to day. 300 vendors that you could buy a solution from can be pretty overwhelming. So you service a lot of SMEs, but also a few large companies. I think one of the things that you said in terms of we just want to talk about your business growth. You rated company culture as critically important to growing a one-person business to 36 employees from Bowen in Queensland. So can you tell us about the importance to you of in that success of building a culture and its effect on the business?
Yeah, I think coming from a service-based business, and obviously starting from 20, this is the only business that I know, so coming from a service-based business, our greatest asset are, our team, because they're the people, presenting the business. So, when we're hiring, we're very cautious. We can teach the technical, and we can, train the technical, but people's personalities and mannerisms, that's what we can't train. So, that's been like one of the most important things that we've looked for over the time. And I think, the comments and feedback we get back are all about the staff. So that our staff are always our greatest asset.
Actually, I think one of the things a lot of small business owners are guilty of, and I know I have been in my past, is that we tend to look for skills rather than attitude. And from what I'm hearing from you, you're basically turning that around and looking for the attitude because you know that you can teach the skills.
Yeah, 100%. And and because we are a service-based business, that's one of the most important things, because they're the ones seeing our customers and liaising with them. So that's probably that's what we've looked for, and it did take us some time to do that. Like we've learned all the lessons along the way.
Yeah. So how would you suggest the other business owners, who are typically skilled in looking at the skill sets rather than determining the criteria for attitude rather than aptitude. What sort of tips could you maybe give them as to what the sorts of things that they need to be looking for?
Yeah, so I think I don't know if it's a unique thing for what we do, but what we normally do is we'll do the normal recruitment process and shortlist down to some candidates, and then normally we'll interview once we've narrowed it down. We might do the first interview as a normal interview, but once we've narrowed it down to one or two, we'll do it over lunch. Normally we'll do the last bit of the interview over lunch, because what we find is that when there's a meal involved or whatever, generally speaking, it takes it from a formal to informal interview, and you start to see their true personalities there. Because if you can put a show on for a certain amount of time, but when it's informal like that, that's where you normally find out people's personalities. So I think that's something that I think has worked well for us, because you can find out a lot more about a person in an informal setting.
That's you're so right. With the employees you've got now, we're hearing a lot about remote working, people evacuating cities, and are all of your 36 employees based in Bowen, or are they spread? And are you sort of living and breathing what I guess you'd be telling your clients, which is you don't need to all be necessarily in one office?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of challenges with getting people to remote areas, and Bowen's a town of 10,000 people. So, it's very hard for people to make that change to especially if they're from a metro area to come to a country town. So we do have offices in Townsville, which is 2 hours from Bowen, and then in Brisbane, because you're not always going to find the skill set that you need or the people you need in a smaller town's pool. We try, but over time, that's and our customer base has moved as well. So we've got those 3 locations. We started in Bowen, but our main office is actually in Townsville and Brisbane.
Right. And is that something that's driving your clients at the moment, dealing with that challenge of working, even if it's from home instead of an office, or another town instead of where you live?
I think because we do have to go on site to businesses. Still not all of our support is done remotely, so we still have to have people based in locations that we service. So there's still a requirement from for that. Having said that, I think with COVID, that's brought everyone's attention to the fact that we actually can work from home now. That it is actually a model that can work. So I think we're going to see some changes happen where you can live in a rural or regional location and still work for a metro company. So I think we're going to see some changes in that space happening.
Actually, one of the key things I think about, when you're working, closely and/or when you're working remotely as well is, obviously as a business is culture. That underlying culture of whatever it might be. I notice from the bioinformation and everything else, you've got a very, very good culture. What do you think are the main highlights or key points that business owners need to be thinking about to establish a culture? Because the reality is, whether you actually create a culture or you do nothing, you are actually creating a culture, and it may not be the one that you want.
Yeah, and I'm probably not the best person to answer that because, I didn't go out to create a culture. It sort of evolved over time. So we're lucky that it has evolved into a good culture. But I don't know. I think the biggest thing that from my point of view is I think you just have to be genuine. You have to genuinely care about, customers as one. But I think you have to be genuinely care about the staff or your team that you have. This is not just a my show. It takes our whole team to make this thing work. So you have to be genuine and you have to genuinely care and genuinely be thankful to your team around you. So and they see that, and I think it's one thing that that makes them feel part of something.
I think the other thing about that is that it's building that level of trust so that they feel empowered.
Exactly. Because as running a business, you can't be in 30 places at once. So you've got to trust your team that they're going to do what you would do. So there has to be the trust there. There has to be loyalty there, and yeah.
Thanks, Ashley. And on today's episode of Small Business Banter Radio, we're talking with Ashley Darwen, who is a founder of ADITS in Bowen and a couple of other locations. Ashley, one of the things when we spoke before this interview was, I'm changing tack here slightly, but the importance for you of your customers aligning their business strategy and their IT strategy. IT strategy for a lot of business owners is a lot of different things. So can you just talk a little bit about the importance in today's environment of having a business strategy and an IT strategy that is closely aligned?
Yeah, no, definitely. So when if I can give an example, if we're coming and we're onboarding a new customer, for instance, the first thing that we do is take an audit of their business as such to see what they've got from a technology point of view to see what they've got. That's one part. The other important part is we sit down with the business and understand, one, what the business is, what they do, how they do it, and then what their plan is in the next 12, 24 months. Because what we need to make sure is that from a technology idea is that what they have and what we're going to implement as time goes on is because if they're going to scale in the next 12, 24 months, we need to make sure that what we're suggesting to them and advising them is going to be in line with how their business is going. So I think that's just as important, the technology, as understanding the business itself.
Yeah. So you're avoiding just implementing maybe a short-term fix, or maybe what you think is a solution for them, but instead trying to understand what the business owner wants to do with the business. Do they want to scale?
Yeah.
And so look forward 12, 24, 36 months. And increasingly businesses are going online. And is that what you're seeing in your client base, that there has been a shift from offline to online, particularly through the last 12, 18 months?
Yeah, I think businesses have a new appreciation for technology and how they can benefit from using it. A classic example is during COVID. What we've been talking to businesses about working from home when they're required, or working outside the office, was never a thing until COVID come along, and they're like, "Well, you remember how you told me about that a year ago? Can we actually do that now? Because we need to send our staff home for 6 months," even though they didn't know it was 6 months at the time. But so all of a sudden everyone now appreciates what technology can do to enhance the business.
Actually, one of the things that I've become aware of and talking in a previous interview is that technology is very much talked about as digital is the flavour of the month for governments and business and everything at the moment. But there seems to be two gaps, and particularly in regional areas. One of those is infrastructure, in terms of not all areas are serviced well by infrastructure to support going digital. And the other one is digital literacy. Where a lot of business owners, particularly new businesses and or older businesses that are looking to update, are not overly literate about what they can do and where to go and everything else. Is that part of the gap that you fill? But also, how would you suggest to sort of a business who might be a bit challenged with computer literacy, how to go about getting up to speed with the things that they need?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think the first one about the roadblocks and challenges with infrastructure, especially in regional Australia, we do have an issue with connectivity and internet speeds. So the adoption to the cloud and things like that is a lot slower in regional areas versus in metro. So, but that's changing over time, and that will evolve eventually. So we will get there. I think in terms of education for businesses, I think as an IT industry, as our industry, we need to get better at working with businesses to bridge that gap and to be that conduit and to help them through the journey of, okay, well, you're a paper-based organization now, so how do we move forward to make you more efficient? And I think that's on our industry and providers to do that. And I think businesses need to go to their providers, their IT providers, and say, "Hey, how do I do this? Can you have a look at this? What's your advice on this?"
Is that? I think it's like can be two different languages.
100%. We think not, but yes, there is.
Yeah. And is it sometimes it helps for when you're running a service business to kind of focus on some of the real risks and challenges to get attention. So what are some of the risks and challenges you see emerging emerging for businesses that are, have invested in an IT infrastructure and their business is heavily reliant on it?
So I think, and if you turn on any media every second day, there's data breaches, there's cybercrime. I think our biggest threat to technology at the moment is understanding the risk to businesses that, yes, everything is now in a digital format, and it's about protecting that data. So I think businesses are slowly understanding how to do that, but we still have a long way to go to understand a business to understand their risk if something happened to that data, and how that would actually stop the business. So I think our focus as an industry and companies providing advice to businesses, a lot of those conversations now will be around security.
Right. So, and can you talk about an example where it's been catastrophic? That.
Oh, look! There's so many examples out there. If you've got a business, for instance, I did read something the other day where a business had simply a finance user in a business had their password, guessed, or they'd accidentally given out their password. Now she happened to be the accounts receivable person, so what they'd done is they waited till a big invoice went out, a $20,000 or $30,000 invoice. They changed the bank account details on the invoice and then put it back in her inbox. So the lady had gone, okay, well, I'll pay this invoice, put the bank details in, not knowing that the bank details weren't the company that she should be paying. It's to someone that's hacked her account. So all of a sudden that business is now $20,000 or $30,000 or whatever the amount is. But that's how easy it can happen.
Yeah, I don't think some of those crimes are getting the attention that they deserve, and it's a bit like theft from staff. It owners don't necessarily want to talk about it, or so it's a really I think that's a good example where the investing in some preventative IT solutions
and just training. So there's that education, training, because if you look at the statistics for, data breaches in Australia, 85% of them come from end users with that, similar stories to that one that we just said. So, the staff are the greatest risk at the moment. So I think an education is a big proponent of making sure that we can prevent that.
It sort of loops back to, that what you started talking about with your own business, the culture, recruiting the right people. I mean, there's always going to be opportunities to damage a business, getting and trusting your people, supporting them with good IT systems. Look, you deal with a lot of different businesses. What are some of the exciting? We've talked about risk there, and
everyone's got scared.
Yeah. So, what are some of the exciting uses of technologies and businesses you've seen, either adapt or emerge in the last 12 months off the back of a good IT? It's a very broad term, but an IT system.
I think one of the things, in the medical space or aged care space, where we're starting to see, and it goes for any business, but you create these efficiencies in a business where you're moving a person from, instead of doing data entry in a staff room or things like that, you're moving them back to doing what their core business is. Whether it's a nurse at the bedside talking to a patient, you're using instead of them being wasting an hour or so doing data entry, they're sitting there talking to the patient, or talking. There's just lots of efficiencies, but it's taking people back to what they do best, rather than sitting there doing data entry. They're doing what they enjoy doing, and what they should be doing. So I think we'll see a lot of efficiencies from technology come in place, but it will just make the end user experience better, not so much anything else, but it will put people back to what they love to do.
Well, what they should be doing.
And what they should be doing, exactly.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, look, there's some, I think we're in, if you want to look at some silver lining, there's more opportunity than ever culturally and from an IT system perspective to work in different places to do the same job.
The flexible work environment. Now, people can work 2 days a week at home instead of commuting, so they've got more time with their families. So there is a lot of good things happening.
Yeah, no, sure is. Hey, look, we're coming up to near the end. You've grown a business substantially, so congrats on doing that. And getting into business at 20. Absolutely champion that idea. And can you just talk about, in the last minute or two, who you've got a fairly big small business now. Who do you talk to? Where do you get your advice on, in terms of growing and dealing with all the day-to-day challenges of running your own business?
So that's a good question. I think there's twofold. It's one, having a good team around you to, that share the same vision and are on the same page to make sure, from an operational point of view, that the business works well. We're fortunate enough that we have what you probably would call an advisory committee that
advisory board.
Yeah, like an advisory board. You know, we did a merger with a business early on, and we were lucky enough to get those skills in as an advisory board. And I think that's important. You know, I suppose when I started, it was your parents giving you advice, and they still do. I think the more mentors you can have, the better.
Yeah.
The better you go. You know, a saying that I remember someone telling me was a problem shared is a problem halved. So, you know, if you can bounce ideas off, you know, that makes a whole lot of difference.
Yeah, look, we recently chatted with Louise Brockman from Advisory Board Centre, who's also from Queensland, you know, and the power of external advice. And even at the level of one person trying to grow a business, or in your case with 40 employees. So, look, congrats on what you've achieved, Ashley. Just want you to give us your sort of top tip for a small business owner listening in to do a better job of tackling their IT challenges. What's the number one thing you would endorse them to do?
From an IT perspective, I would reach out to your provider and start the conversation on how, you know, get them to understand your business. If that's not something they do, find a provider that's willing to work with you and understand your business, and then they will overlay the technology on top.
Right. So again, that strong linkage between business strategy and IT strategy.
Yeah. It's the same as having an accountant or a financial planner or your legal advice. It's just IT is becoming, you know, is an important part of a business. Yeah.
Excellent. Hey, Ashley Darwen, thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate your insights and your time and all the wisdom you've shared on your business and the growth you've been able to achieve. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
All the best. So that's all for today's episode of Small Business Banter. Anthony and I continue to be inspired by bringing you small business experts and other small business owners and hearing their stories. For any of the links, resources or information we've talked about on the show today, or to contact Anthony or myself, please head over to smallbusinessbanter.com, or you can find us on both Facebook and Instagram. Anthony and I would love you to tune in at the same time next week for another episode of Small Business Banter.